Hi. New setup, new room, new time of the year. Drum Corps 2024 just ended at Indianapolis. I was able to watch that. That was absolutely fantastic. Just wanted to kind of do a little bit of an unscripted video, talk about how my 2024 season went as a staff member, and then some of my thoughts on the 2024 season just off the top of my head as an audience member. I did get to watch quite a few shows, so let's get right into it. First off, let's talk about the elephant in the room, considering I'm a Blue Devils alumni. Blue Devils came in third place. Wow. First time in, I think, 18 years, since 2006, I want to say. As a member, I mean, how couldn't you be disappointed about that? I can completely understand that, when you have a legacy like that, it can be hard to think about filling the shoes of it. I remember in 2022, one of the biggest things that I was scared of was, what if we get third? What if we kind of end that legacy? And I was lucky enough to not have to fill the shoes that come with placing third. And I don't think it's anything that the members should be disappointed in themselves for. I think they had a fantastic season. I think that, there's just some things with their show that, Boston and Bluecoats had some stronger areas at certain parts. And that's not their fault. They're not the ones that designed the show. They're not the ones that designed the drill. They're not the ones that wrote the music. They're the ones that paid the tour fees and showed up. And I think that's a bigger thing, and I'm going to get into that later. But yeah, so beyond Blue Devils coming third, congratulations to Boston Crusaders. I'm sure that there's some members in there that marched in 2022 that are marching this year, and I'm sure that they're very, very excited and very pleased with themselves after this season. I know that not all of them, they weren't like salty about 2022, but definitely like you get a chip on your shoulder after that, I would say. And so for the members that are coming back, and even though they got second place, I mean, beating the Blue Devils, like as a Blue Devil, you understand that when you march a season, there's a target on your back the whole season, and only on your back for the most part. Like, yeah, there's some cores, but everybody in the top 5, they're gunning for you. And so for Boston Crusaders, congratulations. I think it was a fantastic show. I saw it a few times. It wasn't a hype show for me. I think it was just a very well-designed show. I think the moments that hit very well. I liked the music. I liked the drill. I liked the uniforms. They grew on me throughout the season. On to number 1, the Bluecoats. I think that their show was designed very well for what they were trying to go for, Entropy. At the beginning of the season, I watched that show, and I was just like, it's boring. And at the end of the season, I watched the show, and I think there were still parts that bored me quite a bit. But we talk about like the way that Blue Devils have shows that aren't very popular, but they're designed well for what the Blue Devils are trying to go for. I think that Bluecoats did a very, very good job with taking that kind of design philosophy and applying it. I understood the purpose of the show. I understood what the show was trying to say. With Entropy and kind of the props, did a very good job of coming apart and going from order to chaos. I think that was all great. But I think the bigger thing this season, beyond Bluecoats winning, and congratulations to all those members, is Phantom Regiment. Holy crap, Phantom Regiment. They looked great. They sounded amazing. I'm sure if you guys haven't seen it yet, I posted about like a minute and a half of their lot audio from what I could get when I saw them, and they are just loud. They had to be one of the loudest, if not the loudest horn lines out there, and they played hella. They played so much. They played so well. And they marched a lot too. And I think that's the big thing is I saw a post on, I want to say it was on Facebook, maybe it was on Reddit or something like that, of people talking about, well, why doesn't any corps like run and gun their closers? Like back in the day, and I say back in the day like it wasn't like 6-7 years ago, almost everybody would end their show by setting up a company front and just marching like the craziest drill you've ever seen. And Phantom did that very, very well this year. I mean, like, you look at the box pull into a Z pull. It's very reminiscent of old style, like, cadets, I want to say. And just because of the running and gunning stuff, they marched very, very well. I mean, obviously, as a Z pull, how can you not be reminded of the cadets? But also with that drill rider, I've marched that guy's drill before, and I've always loved the drill that he wrote for us. I mean, especially in 2019, we had some really, really fun stuff. And there was some moments in there where I was like, hey, we did that in 2019. There was some Infinity drill, just lots of really, really cool stuff. And I think it was well appreciated from me, and it definitely was my favorite show this season. So yeah, that was finals. I think there was a few other things that I saw. Troopers, they looked fantastic. They sounded fantastic. They were marching quite a bit, and I really enjoyed their show thoroughly. There's some other shows in there. I thought Blue Stars, I saw them a couple times. I think the first time I saw them was, I don't remember the exact show, but it was a show with Phantom Regiment, and it was our first show with the World Class Corps, somewhere on the East Coast. I don't remember, but Blue Stars just looked fantastic. I think the members had an extremely high level of clarity in all of the body shapes, everything that they were doing. And one thing that I kind of noticed, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit, was the uniforms. They had these uniforms that kind of looked like shirts, and then I guess the front of the shirts came down into a full sequined front with like I guess what you would call an apron at the front. And I didn't realize this before because I didn't get to watch a lot of shows as an audience member during the time that I was marching. But when you have a full set of like the gray sparkly sequins and they're covering the entire front of the body, I feel like the clarity from where one member ends and where another one starts, and we talked about this with the Blue Coats uniforms a little bit too, it starts to become muddy a little bit. And I don't think that was a particularly bad thing. I think that they worked it very well. It was very beneficial for their visual program. But I'm just interested if anybody's caught on to that, or maybe that's just something that I noticed. If you guys have any comments on that, please let me know. But yeah, moving on from that, I think one thing that I wanted to talk about was the fact, just my experience as a staff member on tour. So for those of you who don't know already, I mean, I did a video on it already, but for those of you who didn't already know, I was a visual staffer for Gold, Drum and Bugle Corps. They're located in, I think, Oceanside, San Diego, California. I don't remember exactly where. And it's kind of funny because we didn't rehearse there ever. But besides the point, I was a visual staff member for Gold. I had a very, very good experience. I think it was really enjoyable. It definitely was interesting because I've taught high school band only for about 4 years now. And this was my first year, like full season teaching a drum corps. And I think it was a really good experience. It's nice to see the members you actually get to see something through. Sometimes with high school marching band, it just sucks because there's not enough time in the year. You start from somewhere and then you have to get them as far as you can in such a small amount of time. And it almost felt that way with Gold, but I just felt like there was more time to make changes to the show, work on different techniques and stuff like that. And that was the big thing. Now, the bigger thing, and I think the thing that I was a lot more appreciative in terms of a learning perspective, because you're always learning, especially in education. There's never a time where you just know everything. You always have to be able to learn and put down your ego enough to accept that maybe you're wrong at some points. In terms of judging, obviously, as a staff member, you go to critique every night. If you don't know what critique is, after a show, the judge will send you all of their tapes. All of the judges will send you their tapes where they record on things pretty much like this, where they'll stand there during the show or be in the box and they'll watch the show and they'll give their critique and then they give you a score, right? So you get those judges' tapes. You usually, as staff member, we try to listen to as many as we can before the critique, but typically, at least from my experience, what I would do is I would just pick one tape, whichever one I'm going to listen, or whichever judge I'm going to speak to that night, and just listen to the tape over and over again, take some notes. So the judge that I spoke to almost every night, I think there was only 2 shows that I didn't talk to a judge, but for the most part, I talked to VA judges. At least as far as when we left California, I talked to VA judges only for the rest of the season. And so in speaking to those VA judges, you learn a little bit about design, what judges think is good design, what they think is well composed, and things that they see as vulnerabilities in your show. And so you learn a lot about what judges see as vulnerabilities, and obviously you can't take every judge's you talk to a judge, and sometimes you just got to take what they say with a grain of salt. But if you get a comment 2-3 times, then you know, okay, that's something that needs to be changed or looked at, And so one thing that I noticed, and I think this might come as a surprise to a lot of people, is that they key in on prop moves a lot. Every single time that we would move a prop that wasn't quite choreographed or like composed in a manner that was really, really well done, the judges would key in on that. They would critique it. They would say, well, you just need, you need to take a look at that and see if there's any other options for when you can move that prop, the velocity at which you move that prop, and if none of those can be changed, the characterization that's going on while you're moving those props. And I think that's a big difference from maybe tapes that have gone in the past. I heard tapes from last year and from years previous, and I don't think I've heard a lot of judges talk about props before as much as I did this year. And that might be a good thing. We see cores like, I'm going to talk about Phantom Regiment again. Every single time that they moved those props, it was characterized, I would say. They were doing something with those props. There was a reason that those props were moving on the field beyond just setting the stage in a different way. And secondly was the flutter running thing. I think a lot of people, and older people especially, but they're not the only ones that talk about, is when cores will go from one place, they'll play something, and then they'll just run from one place into another, through a scatter into another form and play something else. And the judges keyed in on that a lot as well. And so I think that when you see groups like Blue Devils, who got third this year, and you hear tapes like the way that I hear and I see the show that Blue Devils are doing, I can kind of understand a little bit why the Blue Devils this year may not have performed very, very well, especially in those design scores. You talk about music analysis, visual analysis, GE a lot of the time as well. And sometimes I can understand why that may have been more of a vulnerability for them this year. There's a lot of prop moves and they weren't overly characterized for them. There's a lot of times where they were just in a scatter form. They weren't really in an actual form. And there was a lot of times when they were just running from one place to another. And again, that's no fault of the members. That's what the design staff gave them. But when I hear tapes like the tapes that I received when I was on staff for another corps, and then I look at what other corps are doing and seeing that they're not performing as well competitively, I kind of take that in and apply it to what I'm seeing. And so I think with that, we're going to hopefully see drum corps do stuff more like Phantom Regiment, a lot more marching, a lot more characterized movement, whether it be pushing a prop or running from one place to another. There's not a lot of times in Phantom Show where you see the group run from one place to another for no reason at all. There's a lot of everything that they do is highly characterized. There's reasons behind everything that they do, every step that they take, really. And I think that some corps need to take a stronger look at that, because in my eyes, Phantom is going to get a championship in 2 to 4 years, I would say. And some people might say, oh, that's too early, but I think Phantom has got the right idea right now. They have a very, very strong design staff. They have a very, very strong educational staff. And I think they've had strong shows for the past couple of years. And so hopefully with that, we see corps kind of adopting more of that style, because they took a group that was, I want to say, 6th, 5th place last year to 4th. And in my opinion, maybe could have even been 3rd had there been like another week of tour. I think Phantom just had a really, really strong show that the members could get behind. So I talk about strong shows, and I might have mentioned this before, whether it be in the tour fees video or something like that. But for members, I feel like nowadays you're playing a Russian roulette of what kind of uniform am I going to wear? What kind of show am I going to march? And I honestly think that that's not a good thing for the members. If drum corps are holding their show reveals back for so long, and maybe even like when I marched Blue Devils, I don't think I got to see the uniform till halfway through move-ins. That's kind of normal because sometimes you don't always get the uniforms right away. But it's also kind of scary. I think for Blue Devils, at least I knew that I was going to wear something that made me look like a Blue Devil. Whereas when I marched Pacific Crest in 18 and 19, I wore 2 different uniforms. I wasn't unhappy with either of those uniforms. But at the same time, there's been, I'm not going to name names, but there's been corps that have marched uniforms where I was like, I would never want to march in a uniform like that. And this is where I go to troopers. So for the past 3 years, troopers have been doing, I guess, kind of cowboy shows. At least they wear the cowboy uniforms. They play some pretty good music. And I think that's a good thing. And if you don't know already, troopers already announced their show for the next season. And I think for members that see, hey, I can go here, I'm going to basically know what kind of uniform I'm going to get. I already know kind of what kind of show I'm going to get. As a prospective member, especially when you spend $5,000, if you have the money to be able to spend $5,000 on marching a season, you probably have the money to be able to fly out and march wherever you want geographically. And so for troopers, that's a good thing. I think they're going to see a lot of prospective members with maybe higher talents than they've gotten in the past that want to march a show that they actually want to march. If we see troopers still kind of doing shows like that, maybe they switch it up just a little bit in the next few years, they're going to see more members that aren't willing to take a risk marching somewhere where they might have a uniform they don't like or a show they don't want to march. And so maybe some other corps should start taking a look at that. Announcing your show early isn't always a bad thing, especially if you want to get members that want to march a cool show. Other than that, I think that this season was really, really fantastic. I was really happy with everything I saw. I think competitively, it's probably the most competitive year that we've had since after COVID 2022, 2023. Obviously, Bluecoats was undefeated again this year, which means that we've had 3 undefeated seasons, not from the same corps, but 3 undefeated seasons from the championship for the past 3 years. Hopefully we see corps actually compete with each other for that first place ring, that championship, that gold medal. Other than that, I don't have a lot much else to talk about. I really enjoyed the 2024 season, and I hope you guys did too. And if you have anything to talk about, whether it be something I mentioned in this video, something that you want to mention about 2024, let me know. I will see you guys in the next video, whenever that may be.